Is safety a top priority in your fleet? Whether it's already priority number one or something you're striving to improve, fleet safety should be at the forefront of every successful fleet operation. Welcome to today's webinar, Data Driven Decision Making, Enhancing Fleet Safety and Mitigating Risk, sponsored by GPS Trackit. I'm Lauren Fletcher, Executive Editor of Fleet, Trucking, and Transportation at Bobbit. And as your fleet changes and grows, so do the opportunities and challenges that come with it. I'm excited to be the moderator for today's conversation about helping fleets work to create and maintain a safer fleet. The data is clear. Fleet professionals want safer fleets and need guidance to help improve safety practices among drivers and their vehicles. Today's fleets understand the value of improving safety practices, but aren't always sure where to start. Today's expert panelists are here to help. With us, we have Matthew Betts, Fleet Safety Expert at DTE Energy, Dr. Allison Betts, VP of Product Development and Senior Consultant at ABA Technologies, Inc., Robert Auer, Fleet Manager for UPS, and Jeff Alsop, Senior Director, Indirect Sales at GPS Trackit. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Matthew for a quick introduction. Matthew?
Well, thanks. Just a little bit about who I am, I guess, and where I fit in this. This year, I recently figured out marks 50 years in fleet for me. And most of that time has been focused on fleet safety. I've written articles, some with Lauren, done countless presentations around the country on the topic, and sometimes it was even my job to represent companies that provide safety to fleets. In addition to that, I've been very active on the boards of NAFA, AFLA, NETS, and in fact, this year, I'm president of AFLA. So I say all of that because, as you might imagine, I have a ton of conversations with fleet managers all over the country in many different areas and representing many different types of fleets. And all of their concerns around safety seem to boil down to a couple of common threads, or maybe even just one. And that is that, they're doing all the training that they're supposed to do. Really good fleets are doing regular MVR monitoring. They all have telematics. They're putting all the safety equipment on their vehicles that you would expect a fleet that is focused on safety would include. And all those components are really important. But all of them still complain that their drivers are still getting in crashes. And it seems like the one thing that we can't control or haven't controlled yet is unsafe driving behavior. And so the fleets that have a focus on safety tend to have a good fleet manager. They probably have a corporate safety manager focused on fleet, but I haven't met many, or maybe even any yet, that have experts in touching the driver and getting that driver to change their behavior by using the data that's available to us and the proper techniques of coaching. And so that's where I'm happy to be able to introduce my daughter, Dr. Allison Betts, to the audience today.
What a fantastic introduction. And with that, Allison, actually, would you give us a little background on yourself?
Absolutely. I do not have 50 years experience in the fleet field, relatively new to fleet. My background is in behavioral science. So all of my graduate training was in the area of studying human behavior. And about, I would say, close to 10 years now, my father and I had been talking a lot of, my work on my dissertation and what I do. And he was kind of like, this is something that could really be powerful in the fleet industry. So we started talking about driver behavior and the different barriers or issues or unique barriers with fleet and working with a driver who is primarily by themselves and how you change behavior. And so I've been presenting at some of those similar conferences that he mentioned, AFLA, NAFA, more recently NETS, and really trying to show the fleet world how, although the data that is available now with the technology is wonderful, and it allows us insight to what's happening second by second without being in the car with the driver, we still need to have an additional plan specifically to hold the drivers accountable. So to manage accountability of those data. So how can we use those data to continue to inform what's working, and how can we get to the drivers to make better decisions and choices when they're in the moment? And that's what I'll be talking about today.
Thank you. And Robert, will you give us a little background on yourself?
Sure. My name is Robert Auer. I'm a fleet manager for UPS. Started out my career straight out of high school as a technician with Ford, and kind of worked my way up through the ranks for ASC master, Ford master, things of that nature. Eventually had the opportunity to come to UPS as a technician. Came to UPS as a technician, and always wanted to do more. I've been working my way through the ranks as management, and just trying to utilize the background that I have to make the job safer, more efficient, and more pleasurable for the employees. So it's been a fun ride.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Jeff, will you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Sure. Jeff Alsop, Senior Director, Indirect Sales with GPS Trackit. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I've got roughly 2 decades of experience in fleet and telematics space, ranging from a sales guy to running indirect sales, direct sales. I took a fun stint as a solutions architect and sales engineer, so got to geek out on all our neat products and understand them from a product level on everything that they do. And so a lot of what I'm going to be speaking about today is some really interesting statistics and data around some interviews and surveys we did in conjunction with Bobbitt for some fleet managers and some fleet professionals like Robert, and kind of give you some insights into that and how GPS Trackit can play a role in your fleet safety programs. So happy to be here.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for those introductions. I think it's really clear why we have each of you guys on this particular call, and the insight you're going to have is just exceptional. I'm sure at this point, everyone's really excited to go ahead and jump right in. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to hand the floor over to Jeff to set the stage and share a little bit of that data behind our current fleet safety efforts and challenges, and a little bit about what he's seeing right now. So Jeff, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, so we're going to be covering the data from a 2024 fleet safety report that we're going to launch over trends, driver behavior, and how AI technology plays a role in that. So really the key component here is our video solution. So smart video monitoring is, we think, a very smart business decision. So in conjunction with Bobbitt, over the course of May 2023 to August 2023, we interviewed roughly 300 fleet professionals with an average fleet size of around 103 vehicles, class size ranging from class 4 to class 8. So we got a real good swath of information to kind of cover. So let's go ahead and jump into some of that data here. All right. So it is imperative for fleets to monitor their safety. Driving by nature is risky, especially for fleet drivers. They're going to drive on average 20 to 25,000 more miles than a non-fleet driver, a consumer driver, somebody driving their Honda Accord out on the highway each day. And 20% of fleet companies are going to experience an accident each year. So some of the data from our respondents, 94% consider it very or extremely important to continuously improve safety practices among their drivers and across their fleet to mitigate these type of things. We need to be able to address this clear and present danger for fleets in the field. So motor vehicle crashes are actually the #1 cause of work-related deaths. And what we feel is by leveraging a solution like video telematics, we can help mitigate that human error and mitigate that risk. So what is the safety imperative? How do we address that danger? How does that impact performance? So let's take a look at some of the respondent data there. So crashes are common, guys, unfortunately. 86% experience them. What we feel like is with our products, with video AI, it helps predict and prevent those accidents. So in-cab edge coaching, real-time feedback can help reduce risky driving behavior. 65% say that video evidence is very or extremely necessary when crashes happen. So we want to be able to protect your drivers and your fleet from those liabilities and false claims. What it helps really prevent is the he said, she said scenario, the witnessless accident where you don't have anything besides potentially a camera for exoneration, which is clear-cut evidence. And then we also look at performance. 96% of our surveyed fleet professionals constantly measure driver behavior to help improve driver behavior, productivity. That helps deliver cost savings through safer and better driving. So there's some key areas of focus that we found. All right. So some additional statistics here. So right now, only 30% of our respondents use dash cams, but 65% of them find that video evidence is vital to their safety programs. 29% indicated that insurance companies process claims more quickly, right? The faster evidence shrinks the investigation cycle when the whole thing is on video. We've seen people directly on the roadside. They can show the police officer the video of what just happened in real time, and tickets are assigned immediately, and then you have that evidence for your insurance company as well. And again, 33% indicated they received insurance benefits or discounts by having this type of safety technology in place. So that could mean your premiums are decreased, or we all know with the insurance companies, annually you get a review and an audit, and through underwriting, typically nowadays, you're going to get an increase on your insurance. Maybe this type of a solution can help decrease the cost of that increase potentially. So really the theme here is crash footage aids in those insurance claims for sure. And again, the benefit all going back to monitoring that driver behavior, being able to coach more effectively as well. All right, this is my favorite part. More than exoneration, it's accident prevention. The exoneration piece is key, right? When something happens, we understand who was at fault. That makes things a lot easier. We just discussed that from an insurance level. I think the ultimate goal for me and how I try to speak to my clients and how our team at GPS Trackit tries to convey the message is this idea of prevention. So majority of fleets are doing a fantastic job of this already through some different ways. So from our survey, 49% coach behavior constantly on a daily basis. They're checking with drivers. They have tools in place to continuously monitor that. Those top three coaching methods are training at 71%, penalties at 46%, and then rewards at 31%. I'm a big fan of the rewards. That's a little lower than I'd expect. And training is obviously extremely key. But when we think about, real quick, we think about penalties and rewards. How do we assign those? How do we measure those? How do we give those out? What's the grading scale for that, right? You have to have the data in order to create those programs. So I feel like what we do at GPS Trackit through either GPS tracking or through leveraging video telematics is we're giving you that information to create those programs around what potential penalties will a driver receive, what potential rewards will a driver receive. And we can scale that because we have effective scorecarding, if you will, around that data to be able to do those type of programs. And on the training aspect of it, when you have that video evidence, you're able to, what Allison's probably going to speak a lot about is one-on-one driver conversations, is being able to show them their behavior and understanding the feedback. On top of that, with the edge processing and the in-cabin coaching that our solutions offer, they're continuously being coached in the cabin every single day. So it becomes gamification and a psychological change in helping them be more aware of how they're operating the vehicle. So quickly, we'll go over some top ROI benefits, impact on claims, lowering those insurance costs, safer drivers, reduce crash-related costs. And when we think about the potential snowball effect of an incident or an accident, It's insurance, it's potential litigation, it's vehicle damage. A worker might be injured, so you got workman's comp. Even if it's not your fault, guys, if your vehicle's not on the road, it can't produce revenue for the company. You've got an asset that you're paying for that's sidelined. Hopefully your employee wasn't injured, but if they are, then they're off the job as well. And so it's this kind of scaling impact when an accident occurs. And like we went, just going all the way back to the first slide, 20% of fleets are going to experience an accident this year. And 86% of our respondents had an accident within their fleet over the past year. So, and then just a fast testimonial we have from one of our clients, the real world benefit of this, to put it in perspective. So this is actually super common with these staged accidents, guys. And if they didn't have our solutions in place, they were looking at about a $250K lawsuit. But there are significant cost and stress savings by implementing this type of technology, because it gives you that transparency, that peace of mind. And our ultimate goal is the exoneration piece, but also the accident prevention piece, with the technology tools that we can leverage. And then it's, what do we do with that? And hopefully this data has been really beneficial from all these people that we've interviewed. And there's this key focus on safety, and then how do we implement that properly? And what resources and budget do we dedicate to that properly to create those effective programs?
That was amazing. I think AI is really a hot topic right now in fleets. And I know anything that can be done to reduce insurance-related costs is going to make a big impact. And keeping those drivers, safe at the end of the day is really important. Next, Matthew had a couple additional observations to add based on his time in fleet safety work. So let's go ahead and hand the board over to him. I
gave more than just a little introduction of myself during my earlier comments. So I think people have an idea of, my experience and the types of conversations I've had. And then Allison talked a little bit about how, we've worked together over the last number of years to sort of fine tune how the work that she had been doing in other areas would impact fleet.
So I'm going to talk a little bit specifically about the driver behavior and bringing in kind of how we can use those data that were just discussed to have a bigger impact on drivers' behavior. There are a lot of different behaviors that a driver can engage in. We have safe behaviors as well as some of the unsafe behaviors, right? So we have those where we want to see eyes on the road, wearing seat belts, doing your regular maintenance checks. These are some of those preventative behaviors that will hopefully we'll see reduce the likelihood of crashes. This is what we would call kind of our leading measures. But then we also have some of the unsafe behaviors that increase the likelihood of an incident. So speeding, distracted driving is a huge one. That's what we hear the most about. Tailgating, driving too closely, hard braking, acceleration, all of those those behaviors that now we have the technology to measure and to see what's happening on an ongoing basis. When I first started looking at kind of working in the fleet industry, the technology was not at all where it is now. And that was one of the largest barriers. Like, how do we know what is happening? What are the drivers doing? Both for reasons that Jeff mentioned, the exoneration, but also the crash prevention, what's actually going on in the car. And there's been research in the behavioral approach to safety with drivers for years and years. However, it's relied mostly on self-monitoring and self-reporting. Sometimes you have the drive-alongs, right, where you have your manager ride with you. But we all know when a teacher, a parent, a boss is around, we are going to behave and respond very differently than when we are on our own. So it's what we call discriminated responding. So when you think about, like, with kids, if those of you have kids, when you have the teacher versus a substitute, if you think back when you were in school too, of how you responded differently, or you have kind of the strict parent versus the easygoing parent. You know who to go to when you want certain things, right? Or what you can say or do around your friends versus an employee or an employer. So it's a little bit different when we have those drive-alongs. What the technology allows us to do is really get the driver to behave in a way as though somebody is always going to be watching. The feedback is always there for both positive and corrective. And that's what I'm going to kind of talk about and emphasize in a little bit. But what we've seen is that even with the technology, drivers know the cams are in the car. They know the telematics are going to be reported. Alerts, supervisors are going to see alerts. Yet we're still seeing, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the highest rates of crashes in the last several years. So the last couple of years have been extremely high in terms of on the road accidents. So why is that happening? Why, if we have the data, if we see what the drivers are doing, why is that still happening? Why are they still making these unsafe choices? So I'm going to put it into perspective a little bit. We take a day-to-day behavior that we're all familiar with, right? So my choice is very clear, but if you had to choose for a snack, you have the healthy option of the apple or the less healthy option of the yummy donut, right? We know that we should choose the apple, right? That's going to be healthier. Yeah, it might not taste as good, but in the long run, I'm going to be making a better choice for myself. Choosing the donut, however, is going to happen, right? It's not the healthy choice. Why do we do it, right? Why do we pick the donut over the apple? And there's a lot of different things that go into our choices in the decision making. So it could be that we're at Dunkin' Donuts or Krispy Kreme or Starbucks or whatever, getting our coffee. And so the donut's right there. Outside of, I think, maybe a handful of times at Starbucks, I've seen bananas available. There aren't many healthy options. It's quick, it's fast. Clearly for the store, it's easier and cheaper. So we have the ease, that response effort. It's right there. We also have in the immediate moment, it tastes good, right? It's the sugar, the sweetness, it's delicious. And guess what? Like, how likely is one donut really going to impact my health? Okay. The problem is, as you choose the donut over and over and over again, each time you make that choice, it's more and more likely going to be impacting your health. So that one time might not be a big deal, right? But as we make that choice over and over repeatedly across time, that adds up. Okay? The apple, a little bit pricier, more effortful to get. We might have to go to a different store or remember to pack it. Maybe doesn't taste as good to some of us unless it's like covered in caramel or whatever, peanut butter, whatever it might be. So you can see how this can become a choice. I want the immediate gratification and satisfy that sweet tooth, or am I going to pick the apple where in the long run, I know it's a better choice, but really how bad is it for me at the moment? So now let's talk about that in terms of drivers. The apple is equivalent to safe driving behavior, whereas the donut is equivalent more to the risky behavior. We've all, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but the majority of us have done some of those risky behaviors that I previously mentioned, right? We've sped, we've tailgated, we've slammed on our brakes, we've maybe rolled through stop signs, definitely probably distracted driving in some way or the other. So why are we choosing when we know that's unsafe? We know that can result in, at the very, minimal, a ticket or a fender bender, but worst case scenario, a fatality or a very costly incident or accident. So what's happening here is that we are making the choices based on immediate gratification and moment-to-moment decisions. So I'm not going to say it's impulsive, but oftentimes there is research to show that impulsivity, so the amount of how impulsive you are, does directly correlate with risky behavior. However, even if we're less impulsive in our day-to-day life, we still can make these more risky choices simply because of the environment around us. And sometimes it becomes habit, right? So for those, I used to have a friend a while ago who every time I would get in the car with her, she would light up a cigarette. It was the environment immediately suggested or caused her to want a cigarette, because in the past, that's when she would smoke. Okay. So when we get in the car, a lot of us, as soon as we see our phone, we pick it up. Right. Or if we see the yellow light, instead of slowing down, it's a prompt for us to speed up. Okay. So sometimes these are such ingrained habits that we don't even realize what we're doing. And that's what we have to work on, is being mindful about our choices and going against what we typically would do. And it takes a lot of support and practice. So when somebody's choosing unsafe or safe, the driver is not the only factor, right? So I don't think anybody, any of the employees, with the exception of few, would maliciously choose to drive risky. Now, there are some times where that happens, and that's where we can weed those drivers out. But for the most part, our drivers and employees want to do the right thing. They want to be safe. They want to make sure that they get home, that others get home safely, and that they're following the organization's policies or procedures. So going back to kind of those choices, is we have to determine how can we shift their choice allocation to safe behavior instead of that risky or unsafe behavior. So choices in a nutshell, when we're talking about this, we're going to talk about how easy or hard it is. Okay, so it's very easy for me to pick up my phone. Then what we need to do is maybe make it a little harder for us if we know that's one of our problems. Put the phone in your purse in the back seat. I know there's other technologies where it can lock, and even Apple has the driver notifications, but make those changes accordingly. What do I get out of it? So this kind of goes to, am I going to get the yummy donut that I love, or is it going to be this apple? Okay. And here are where managers and supervisors come in. You can help stack the deck toward the safe option by adjusting the contingencies, the outcomes, those rewards or penalties. I like to focus on the rewards too, Jeff. So I'm glad you said that. But the rewards are something that we can look at, and it doesn't have to be incentives. There is a lot of research that shows employees just like acknowledgement from their supervisors. Like, hey, I noticed you went X number of days without alerts, or your driver score, however you're looking at the data, you're doing well, keep it up. Just the fact that people are noticing is enough to maintain safe behaviors for a lot of people. So what do I get out of it? This is also something, when you think of what do I get out of it, what else do I have going on right now? Okay. Am I speeding because I have a quota of meeting X number of appointments in a day? If I'm in pharmaceutical sales and I have to visit X number of doctor's offices, I live in the Denver metro area. that is going to be near impossible sometimes based on the day that you're driving, or the time of day you're driving. So what are those other things that are going on? And is it better for me to drive safe and follow my safety procedures, or be risky and meet my quota? So supervisors have to see what other demands are being placed on the driver. And then what's the likelihood that the consequence will happen? We've all sped, I'm sure, sent a text or talked on the phone, and nothing has happened. And what we tend to see, as soon as there is a severe consequence, you get a ticket or you get in an accident, our behavior changes for a very short period of time. And then we slowly start creeping back up because we've experienced the consequence or lack thereof of that unsafe behavior. How quickly will it happen? So what is that outcome and how fast will I get it? So this is something where, especially in the day and age of technology, we're used to immediate gratification, right? Going back to that donut. So that's going to impact our choices. So if we have alerts, in-cab alerts that are saying like, whoa, be careful, you're approaching speed or whatever it might be, that's an example of an immediate consequence that's really effective. What's missing in some of the technology, and I'd love to talk to more of the companies like GPS Trackit, what about the positive alerts that are like, hey, you're doing great, keep it up, right? So some of those things as well. If there's other competing demands going on as well, this is one that we have to look at too. If I speed and make it to my doctor's appointment, or the doctor's office, I might be able to get that sale. That's an increased likelihood. If I miss it, it's most likely that I'm going to lose that sale. I'm going to get yelled at by my boss. So you can see how everything else in the environment is impacting the choices that the drivers make. So when we're arranging consequences for the safe behavior, we want to make it more valuable to be safe. We want to make it more likely we're going to choose the apple over the donut. We're going to choose the safe behavior over the risky behavior. By providing those rewards and positive reinforcement frequently and often, that's going to be extremely helpful. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to come from an individual. The dashboards, the data that drivers can have access to can help with that as well. When we are talking to the individual and having those face-to-face coaching sessions or feedback sessions, being very specific about the behaviors you want to see. We do a really good job about this when we're implementing punishment or penalties. But when we're reinforcing, oftentimes you hear like, oh, great job. You're killing it. Good job. It doesn't tell us anything of what we're doing. Keep up the good work. Well, what's the good work? So being more specific about what you want to see more of is going to help as well. So kind of a little summary of reinforcement. I mentioned the word punishment. We want to see more of the reinforcement for a couple of reasons. It's going to specify what behavior we want to see, like we were talking about, but also it's going to improve the safety culture. If we are only using punishment or penalties as a supervisor, you are now associated with those penalties and punishers, and people are going to avoid you like crazy. They're not going to they're going to do just enough to make sure that Jeff does not get on my case. Okay. Instead, you want to associate yourself with the good things and that positive, trusting supervisory employee relationship. And I kind of got ahead of myself. So there's what we just talked about is a summary. So in sum, we want to make safety a priority by reinforcing the safe behaviors, acknowledging those safe behaviors. And when people do make the healthy choices, because one, it's going to make people happier. It's going to make you more likable, which means they're in turn going to do more things to seek your approval and to seek out that reinforcement. So it's kind of the cycle of, ooh, my boss reinforced and acknowledged how good I was doing. I want to do more of that good stuff to get more of their acknowledgement. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. I don't know about anybody else, but I kind of want a snack right now, but I don't think I'm going to see a donut without thinking about driver safety for a little while. No, I think, it's so important to understand the why, I think, of what's going on with drivers. And your insight was absolutely beyond informative. Thank you so, so much. Keeping things moving, last but absolutely not least, Robert. I know from talking that safety is always top of mind at UPS. Let's dig in and share some of your insights and observations with your group.
Okay, thank you so much. So I appreciate you guys having me on. Obviously, from my position as a fleet manager, I'm concerned not just about the driver safety, but also my technician safety and the public safety, right? So, from day one, when you start a job at UPS, every new employee starts training in safety, literally from day one. UPS culture is a safety culture. We own and operate a large and diverse fleet, from delivery vehicles, tractor trailers, aircraft, all types of different hybrid alternative fuels, right? So there's a lot of safety going on to be able to keep all this, on the public roads and in the air. So because of our commitment to safety, one of the things that we do is at the beginning of every meeting, we have a safety discussion topic that's relevant to the work group that's being addressed. So one of the reason I've got this slide up, and I'll kind of elaborate a little bit, is I want to just kind of show that safety does not always mean that you have to spend a whole lot of money. It could be something very simple. So in a situation like this is something that I presented at a region automotive managers meeting, just to kind of revisit, a standard practice. Let's see here if I can get this to advance. Again, it doesn't have to, there we go. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Obviously at UPS, we do the things that Allison and Jeff just talked about with the feedback, the coaching, cameras. We do a lot of that. But this slide kind of represents a way to kind of keep it safe, keep it under 3 to 5 minutes when you're addressing a group, whether it's technicians, whether it's drivers, whether it's mechanics. So again, what we covered on this time, again, it was 3 to 5 minutes, is when do we need to practice vehicle lockout, and it just kind of goes through during vehicle repairs, outbound repairs, tractor trailer repairs, anytime a technician on the yard, right? And this is something they get trained. You can see it on there. That's during their first 30 days they get trained on this, but it's also important to revisit it. A slide like this kind of brings you back to concerning the safety and technicians of our drivers. Sometimes it's what we perceive as safe or what we assume to be common knowledge or standard practice. That's what we need to go back and revisit in my mind. When I'm presenting to technicians, driver groups, anything of that nature, I found that it's very helpful to keep it short, keep it sweet, use visuals that can put the driver, put the technician, whatever, in that mind frame, right? They can see themselves doing that act, or they can see themselves being asked to do something or put in a position, to work unsafe, whether, it causes harm to them or another. So, again, just a simple safety start topic. You'd be surprised how well it pays dividends, I've found. So I just wanted to use that as the share, just to show that, hey, for the smaller companies out there, maybe you don't have the millions to invest like we do. You could put a quick PowerPoint together that's discussing something relevant to the driver or relevant to the technician, and start a discussion that way. And of course, we don't want to do death by PowerPoint. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm just saying short, keep it sweet, and make sure that it's relevant. That's all I had.
Thank you, Robert. I think it's clear so much really goes into safety. It's not just the data. It's not just the driver or the vehicle. It's all of these things kind of going hand in hand together. And with that comment on death by PowerPoint, I think you really helped segue us into what I wanted to go into next. So we've presented some info, and I wanted to take a moment to hop in and have a quick conversation with you guys now. Jeff, let's bring things back around to you for a moment. Based on the data that you've been analyzing, what are some of the more common challenges that fleets are encountering when it comes to implementing these safety practices today?
Yeah, fantastic question. I'm glad you asked. I think it's twofold to a degree. one is driver adherence, and Allison had a phenomenal presentation around what are the tools we can use to better accomplish that. I think specifically in our world, it's the idea of Big Brother, and you've got a video camera on me. All you're trying to do is catch me and fire me, right? So you've got to get rid of that stigma. And there's a couple ways I think you do that. I think through technology, through the coaching that we do through our solution. One of those things is called DSA, Driver Safety Assistance. It's an additional layer of coaching a driver without a violation. What that means is if I'm distracted, our camera will give you a pre-warning of a pay attention warning to allow you to correct your behavior before a violation is created. So it envelops them in that process, gives them a chance to correct that behavior, gives them that additional layer of coaching, and then hopefully their behavior changes over time. So we kind of got to get rid of that idea of I'm constantly watching you. Most administrators don't have the time to sit there and stare at a computer screen all day to do this, right? They're looking for a little bit of a post-mortem or some lag measures to monitor safety. So I think that idea that somebody's constantly watching me is kind of patently untrue. It's there from the protection side of things. So that being said, we have to, through Allison's research, through what Robert has said, we've got to incorporate our drivers in this process. That's number one. Number two, which is the hardest part, is if you're going to develop a safety program, a protocol, a process, you got to be willing to enforce it. And that's difficult in this day and age with the labor workforce, some shortages people are experiencing, the fact that in a driver world, somebody will leave for two more cents, 1 more cents per mile to drive for another company. It's you're scared of losing that employee. But I think not here to scare anybody, but the fear factor around, what if I have a major accident because of bad driver behaviors? We get into the lawsuit world where on average it could be 15 to 20K for just a normal accident. You get into a fatality situation, you could look at it up to a $2 to $3 billion judgment against you. I think recently, I think it was last year or a couple years ago, there was an over $1 billion judgment against a trucking company for a fatality accident. So that all goes to say, to Allison's point, there are consequences for not enforcing your policies, right? Incorporate the drivers and then enforce the policies that you've created, I think is some great advice that I could give. That's
fantastic. I think years ago, there was a keynote presentation that I listened to at a conference, and it has had one of the biggest takeaways that I think I've kept with me with this, which was truly always doing what's right, regardless of if anybody is watching you at that moment. And whether there's the camera, whether it's on or whether it's not, making sure you are doing the right thing. And the example given was a man who was on a farm with his father, and they were cleaning things up, and there was an adult magazine that was found while they were cleaning things up. And he said, no, we don't look at that. We, throw it away. Later on in the evening, the boy was walking around. He saw his father cleaning out the truck, and he saw him grab that magazine, and he saw him throw it away immediately. He did what he said he was going to do, not knowing his son was watching him at that time. He still did the right thing. He still did the thing that he said he was going to do. And it's always just really stuck with me on that. You don't know who's watching you and who an example you might be setting for. And it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. If anybody is, you should still be doing the right thing, whether it's for safety or for any other thing that you're doing. Fantastic. So continuing on, Robert, we talked a little bit before this, and you mentioned that every day you have a meeting, UPS meets with its drivers. And I know a lot of us are really experiencing meeting fatigue. I have a few more after this that I've got on my own calendar. How do you keep those morning meetings motivating and ensure those drivers are on time and attentive and kind of keep that going without it being another one of those, just another meeting?
Yeah. So those are what we call the daily meetings that I'm talking about. We call them a PCM. So that's considered a pre-work communication meeting. So those are by design, kind of like what I talked about in my slide earlier, 3 to 5 minutes tops. They're quick, they're relevant. They often include driver involvement, right? So we had a lot of internal safety committees, so maybe a driver wants to give a tip for today. We talk about, the expected weather conditions today, driver vehicle security. We might talk about, there's been a lot of rain. We might talk about driving through high water. There's been a lot of rain, we might talk about low-hanging trees, things of that nature. On occasion, we've definitely shared a quick 30-minute or 30-second, little video of some accident footage or things of that nature. Just keep it quick, keep it relevant. Again, helping that driver see that it's relevant to him and he or she could see himself in that position. That's kind of the key to it in my mind. When it comes to other safety meetings, that we have, more at the management level, those obviously, you get into where you dread those. And we started something a year ago, which I love. I'd love to see other people do this, but a no-call fund, that was the day that you didn't have to worry about conference calls and meetings. So we fit everything in the other 4 days. So, just a little thing to throw out there. I really loved when we did that. Just keeping everything relevant, keep it moving, keeping committees, getting driver involvement. We regularly share between departments. So I'll send technicians over to the tractor trailer department. They'll send some of their representatives over here to my technicians, right? And we just use that information sharing, just to keep it relevant, and communication. Communication is key. We're able to solve a lot of problems that way.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, I'm going to jump over. I've got a question from the audience that just came in. We've got somebody asking, they said they've tried to implement an accident review board. Any thoughts on that? The board would be open to all levels of personnel. Allison, do you have any insights on creating an accident review board?
Yeah, so accident review boards, if done properly, are a great tool and resource. I would expand upon that, and instead of having just an accident review board, create it into a safety committee where you're not only reviewing when accidents occur, but you're meeting frequently, looking at the data even before an accident occurs or incidents occurs to see what are the alerts that are coming in, what are those common alerts. So typically, with the technology, fleet managers and supervisors or whoever's monitoring the data are getting alerts, right? And it might be they're only notified if there's 5 alerts or a certain number of them, if it's repeated. However they have that set up, let's look at those on a regular basis. So let's meet month to month, and instead of waiting until the accident occurs, let's look at the data to see what we can do to help prevent that. So if we're seeing there are a lot of speeding alerts coming in a certain region, or there might be a lot of hard braking and tailgating, depending on where you live, those alerts might be different. So what you do in each region might be different. We might do a little bit more training. Maybe we add in a few more of those the pre-alerts that Jeff was talking about. So if you maybe instead of it beeping at 70 miles an hour, it's going to beep at 68 or something like that. So what can we do in really assessing what data are coming in and how can we use that to minimize the likelihood that it's going to result in an accident? So that's the first thing. And then the second is when an accident does occur, we have to look at it in all contexts. So you have to ask certain questions, not just what was being done. You can look at the data, or the cams and things like that. But now how are we going to adjust moving forward to make sure this doesn't happen again? Not just for the driver, but for the system and for all drivers. So do we need to adjust policy? Do we need to provide more support? What is it? Talking to people, talking to that driver and talking to others, I know they mentioned it'd be open to all levels. Having actual drivers and it not just being leadership is a phenomenal option. So when we help companies develop safety committees, we, instead of calling it leadership, we actually call it safety champions, because it can be anyone. Anyone can be a leader in safety that is truly wanting to improve the safety culture. So bringing in people at all levels, so you hear the driver's point of view as well of the yeah buts to help inform better decisions. So those would be a few of my thoughts.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that insight. We do have another question from the audience that came in. Please sending those through. Please keep sending those through if you've got anything for us. So we've got a question about what are the top 3 or the top fleet safety incidents that you've seen in fleets or in your fleet? What types are they? Are collisions or slips or trips? Robert, would you have any input on that question?
Yeah, it's a great question. Absolutely. So with our fleet, so typically 20% of the claims that we see would be in the slips and fall range. So if you think about, whether walking in the building, walking into the facility, hazards on the yard, potholes or loose gravel, whatever it happens to be. So slips, falls, not using 3 points of contact when entering, exiting a vehicle. So that's 20% would fall into that category. 12%, excuse me, would fall into the in-range motions. So like pushing, pulling, reach, that nature. So if you think on like a class 8 tractor, you're unhooking a fifth wheel or lowering a door, closing swing doors, who knows what it could be, but stuff that would fall into that category. And then our current fleet, believe it or not, only 1.5% of the claims are vehicle accident related. So, we've got a very, very good safety picture at UPS. Not that we're without accident, but, the majority of our claims are more on property, believe it or not.
Thank you for that insight. It's really, really helpful. Moving on to our next one that we've got. Matt, I'm going to come your way with this one. So what is one piece of practical advice or more that you might give to someone starting out implementing safety practices in their operation?
Yeah, I think I'm going to lean on some of the stuff that Allison already talked about. Number one, it has to be a cultural thing. Right? It has to be a core value of your organization, or your drivers aren't going to know what to do, right? If it's a core value is safety, then everybody in the organization knows that it's okay to step back if you feel something is unsafe. If you're a mechanic, you're working on a vehicle and something doesn't feel right, step back and reassess the situation. If you're that driver that Allison talked about that's not going to get to 20 doctor sales calls, you have to know that it's okay. We'd rather have you drive safe than than meet the company quota, right? And that the organization will be willing to look at all factors and make adjustments wherever they are, not just to the driver, but whether, maybe sales management is being unreasonable. I think it also, you have to be willing to adjust the organization's demands on the driver. If you do find something in the data or something in the coaching sessions, if drivers keep consistently coming back and saying, but I was trying to make that 20th sales call, the organization has to be willing to listen to the drivers and make those adjustments. And then I guess one other thing that popped up, and it isn't exactly to this question, but I think it's important. One of the things I've learned over the years in sales is that you can ruin a sales opportunity in one sentence, right? If you say the wrong thing, if you answer a question the wrong way, you can absolutely ruin an opportunity. And that is also true when you're talking to your drivers. And so I think reinforcing the concept that, hey, we need to put some thought into how this works. We train our fleet managers and our safety managers on how to receive the data, how to study the data, how to spot those areas where that we need attention. But I haven't heard of many fleets that spend much time training the field supervisor on how to have those safety conversations. And we can turn an employee off just as quickly as you can lose a sale, right? It only takes one bad conversation.
That's fantastic. I know we're getting a little tight on time, but I do have one more question that I want to throw out there. Jeff, I think, one of the things that we've got a lot of is there's still some common misperceptions. You mentioned that, Big Brother when it comes to video monitoring. Are there any other misconceptions that people still have about video monitoring that we can address or kind of help fleet managers figure out how to talk with their drivers about a little bit differently?
Yeah, I think another really good one is how do I manage this program, right? Especially for the SMB fleets, the larger fleets that Robert's operating, you got multiple layers, right? And the smaller fleets, that fleet manager is also the safety director. He's also in charge of HR. He might be in charge of payroll too, right? So leveraging software correctly and the ease of use of the software is extremely important in the fact that if you're running a good one, it's going to reduce the administrative workload for you, right? We talk about the in-cabin coaching is doing part of your job for you, right? It's creating that gamification, that awareness level in the field without you having to do anything, right? Having an easy, simple to use dashboard, automating alerts that to where you can tackle the big issues in real time are important, but then also having that back end data when you need to have those larger discussions. So I think that's a challenge. That's a little bit of a misperception, is making sure that we choose the right software, we get trained on the software that we're going to utilize to where the administrative workload doesn't seem so overwhelming to us, right? Another key point I want to go back to is that big brother. And I forgot to mention this, and this is the best way I've ever put it to clients that I'm working with or clients that are already working with us. I think this speaks to a lot of what Allison does, is we got to understand that we're dealing with human beings. These are interpersonal relationships. The idea of incorporating the drivers in these policies, incorporating drivers and the people on the road into these safety committees is vitally important. And the idea around our goal is people want to be seen, want to be cared about, want to be valued in their workplace. And if we take this idea of safety in dash cameras or GPS or all the policies and programs they're implementing and couch it with, we just want you to go home to your family at night. We want you to be safe on the road to where you can go home at night. And guys, that's not a guarantee every day. The amount of accidents we see on the road, life in general, it's not a guarantee you get home every night. And if the company can play a role in that and create that emotional vision out of, we actually care about you, we value you as a person, as an employee, let's make sure you get home at night to see your family. And I would hope that would kind of turn it on its head of this isn't necessarily to catch you, to punish you. This is to reward you and to make sure that you're safe. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you so much. So that's all the time we have for today. If anyone asked a question that wasn't answered, we'll make sure we follow up via email. And this information will also be available on demand, so you can get any contact information. I want to thank again Matthew, Allison, Robert, Jeff, and our sponsor, GPS Trackit, for today's presentation.